Hey guys, what is going on? I'm so excited to be here bringing you a video today. I know it has been a very long time, 6 months since my last video, and before that was several months before that, so I felt compelled to make this video, and this sort of reminded me why I started making videos in the first place. Because this got me so excited, what I'm about to talk to you guys about, got me so excited that I just had to make a video on it. Basically what it comes down to is this, and I'll lead into it. I have been an Xbox guy for since 2005, so 14 years I've been an Xbox guy. And I have only thought about switching to PlayStation 5 or less times, and all of them were last year or the year before, because of just the sort of different sort of issues we were experiencing on Xbox, and just sort of the general like player base numbers, Call of Duty going exclusive or you know, timed exclusive to PlayStation sort of gave me a reason to want to switch so that I could have access to that stuff right away, but never did it. So if the PS5, which is what this video is going to be about, if the PS5 was available right now, I would pre-order it. Not only would I pre-order it, if it was available next week, I would go buy it. And I would wait in line to do it. I would take a day off of work if I had to wait in line to do it, which, as a guy who has, over 10,000 plus hours on the Xbox, that is saying something. And someone who spent a lot of money on a PC that I've been playing on mostly for the last year and a half, that's saying something. So we're going to get into that in this video. Before I do, though, thank you for being here. I know if you're here, I don't know if this is your first time watching or if you just maybe have seen me and wondered if I died. No, I did not. Here I am. But this gameplay is of Blackout. I was basically playing only on my PC, PUBG and like Overwatch and stuff, and then I stopped when Black Ops 4 came out, and I got unexpectedly, I mean, I thought I was going to get into Black Ops 4, but I got really into the zombies, and I did like a 120-hour achievement that took me a very long time, and just played a ton of zombies, and then stopped around January, February, got bored of that, went back to Overwatch for a month and a half, and then we just, I still play on the weekends with a friend of mine. We don't get to talk much or play much, so we just play a couple hours on the weekends for fun. And this is what we started playing. We're like, hey man, zombies is getting kind of stale. We got all the achievements on the new map. You want to play some Blackout, see how that goes? And we're like, sure. So we played it, and it was so much more fun than either of us thought. So we've been playing a lot of this. So this is my first solo win. We had 2 duos wins before this, spread out over a week or 2 or whatever. But this was my first solo win, and I was celebrating when I got this. It was epic, to say the least. I was so excited. I jumped out of my chair, which is actually the same exact response I had when I watched this video about the PS5. I literally started screaming and yelling and freaking out, and I sat there for about half an hour just absolutely brimming with the most excitement I've had about something for gaming for a really long time. And that's why I'm here making this video. I got up here, turned on my computer. I haven't turned on my computer in like, 6 weeks. And this is my 4th attempt. All 3 of the previous attempts, I've gotten to the 20-minute mark and then realized that I wasn't going to be able to finish saying what I had to say because I'm saying so much. So I've literally been sitting here for over an hour trying to record this 20-some minute voiceover because I can't cram in all the information that I have to cram in here because I'm so freaking pumped and excited for this. Hadn't watched a video on a console in a really long time. Watched something about the Xbox One S Digital, which is a new Xbox One S that has no disc drive. Kind of lit the guy up in the comments. Like, his review was I didn't know it, so it was like, obviously he was bringing me news. I didn't know that was a thing, and it brought some information and ultimately brought me here. So I'm thankful for that. But I also lit him up in the comments because I really disliked the way he was acting. And really, it just, I'll go into this too, but it's a gamer problem in general. It's a problem of people who play games who have unbelievably unrealistic, lofty expectations that can and will never be met. And so you're basically just setting yourself up for a lot of disappointment. I say this at work all the time, and the people that I work with think I'm just a horrible person. But I say it like semi-jokingly, but also not jokingly. The key to a happy life is low expectations. Now, I'm not saying your low expectations should be like, hey, man, I just want to get Fs so that when you get Ds in school, you're like, hey, I beat my expectations. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is if you're constantly expecting things to just be so awesome and blow your mind, you're always going to be disappointed. If you just expect things to be, good, or like, oh, that looks cool, I can't wait to see what that is, maybe I'll check it out, and then you see it and it blows your mind, that is so much of a better experience and such a better way to live your life than always expecting the moon and just always getting like, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. No offense if you live in Florida. I don't know why I thought of Florida. That was just the first thing that popped in my head. Nothing against Florida. Never been there. I've heard it's beautiful. He was saying like, he can't believe it's not cheaper. He can't believe it only has the same, features. He can't believe it's in the same size box and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, dude, you gotta be kidding me, right? So it's like part of my comment said, look, I know that every gamer out there wants the console to have 360,000 new features and have a free year of Xbox Live and come with 22 free games and also cost $29.95, but that's unbelievably unrealistic. And that's basically the case of what gamers are feeling right now, and I know why they're feeling it. I'm just going to put a better spin to it than they do, because it doesn't do any help to just spin it and say, this sucks, like you should give us more, like this is terrible. Like the spin it deserves is these companies spend so many man hours, so much money, and so much resources researching what we want and what we do. This is the greatest thing ever. This article is going to have Mark Cerny in it, who's he's one of the head of developments at Sony. And I thought I couldn't find exact information on what his exact title is, so that might not be his exact title, but he's definitely very high up at Sony. He's either like the lead architect or the president of Sony America. He's like right there. He's done a couple of those things. So he said a few years ago, with the whole discless thing, he said, we thought that when we created the PlayStation Store, it'd be like, hey man, really cool, like you don't have to go down to the store to buy your disc anymore. You can just like, you can buy it online and you won't have to go down to the store to pick it up and stuff like that. And we thought this was going to be a kind of a cool thing, like a way to save people energy. And he said, what we came to realize was it wasn't that people didn't want to go down to the store to buy the game. It's that people didn't want to get up off the couch to change the disc to play a different game. And so it's like they were trying to do something cool for us, but they did something, they didn't even realize what they were doing because they couldn't, like they're not normal consumers. These are like game developers, people who, work, who just they're not like you and I necessarily. I mean, I work a lot. I work a full-time job and play. So in some ways I'm not like some of you guys either, but they have this like a little bit of a disconnect, because also these guys are a lot older than we are. These guys, most gamers now are younger. So like, a guy who's like 45, while he's been a gamer for his whole life, he's not going to have quite the same issues and problems or thoughts about games that people who are 15 or 20 will. So this was such a refreshing thing to hear, and to hear the things that he said in this article absolutely blew my mind. So I'm just going to get right into it because I've messed it up a few times, and then we'll kind of go, line by line, and we'll kind of play what's happening with. Oh, I just messed up the video. Timeout. I'm going to fix that. It's just for my voiceover purposes. It's not actually affecting anything you guys are going to see, but now my voice might be slightly off. So it's from Wired.com, and it was an interview with Mark Cerny from PlayStation. I'm just going to get right into it. I'll link it down there so you can check it out. I'm going to link it right here. So it says, Mark Cerny would like to get one thing out of the way right now. The video game console that Sony has spent the last 4 years building is no mere upgrade. And I know there's been a lot of fear with people in that, like, hey, are we ever going to have a new console? Like, these consoles are the same console. They're just, like, a little bit different. And that's perfectly valid. The reason that this had to happen anyway is because these guys made such underpowered consoles in the first place. Games like, I don't know if you guys knew this or not, I became sort of an elitist when I switched to the PC, and I was like, man, 60 frames a second is kind of like the bare minimum. Like, if you can't even get that, you might as well, like, be at a disadvantage, which you are. I didn't realize this, though. Games like Mario and, like, Yoshi's Island and Mario Kart and those kind of games, those games are 60 FPS. That was the standard. So games are 60 FPS. TV shows are shot in 30 FPS. Like live type TV shows. I would guess now a lot more of the like dramatic shows like Walking Dead and that kind of stuff, I would bet those are lower, but movies are 24 frames per second. So that's why movies have like a different, softer look. And they've said for a long time, like, you know, in the early 2000s, this changed. And I'm certain that there were developers and people who were in power saying like, hey man, these guys wouldn't notice between 60 and 30 FPS. If we go down to 30 FPS, do you know how realistic we could make these graphics look? Like we could get hyper accelerate how good these graphics look. So that's why there was a three-way point, right? So you had Mario 64 on the Nintendo 64 in like 1995, 1996, and then you had Halo 1 in like 2001 or 2, and then you had Modern Warfare 1 in like 2007. So look at the transition there. Over the course of basically a decade or a little more, the graphics went from barely 3D polygons on the N64 to Modern Warfare 1, which looks ridiculously good considering how old it is. Now, obviously, that game runs at 60 FPS, so that's a little bit different, but that's what they did. They decided, like, hey, man, we have this really powerful Xbox, OG Xbox, we have this really powerful PS2. We could probably scale back the frame rate and add richness of detail to all these frames, and that's what they did. And since then, it's been a struggle to get back to 60. There's really only a handful of games that do it consistently on the console. Call of Duty being the main one, Battlefield, and the sports games like Madden, FIFA, NCAA football, which they don't make anymore, all that kind of stuff. Those games were all at 60 FPS also, and there's not many more. So this is a limitation of the CPU. Plain and simple, it's a limitation of the CPU. It's an old CPU. It's an AMD CPU, semi-custom. That's how they do it at AMD. They make them semi-custom for these console manufacturers, and that's from a Jaguar architecture, which is from like 2010, and it's not very good. So recently, AMD released Ryzen, which is the Zen architecture, and that came out in 2017, and that just blew the doors off of everything, and that inspired me to build my PC, and that's what I'm running in my PC right now. Is a Ryzen 7 1700, which is an 8-core CPU. It runs at 3.9 gigahertz. I have it overclocked. Normally, it runs at 3.0 gigahertz. That's the base. So the console's architecture is not only an architecture before that, so it's significantly worse than that, but it also runs at 1.7 gigahertz. Just for reference, I lose about 20% performance to Intel CPUs at high frame rates because my CPU can't keep up. It's a 3.9 gigahertz CPU as opposed to these Intel chips, which in 2011 were hitting 4 gigahertz. So I bought a CPU that came out 6 years later and is struggling to meet those numbers. So the 1.7 gigahertz on the consoles is ridiculously underpowered. And I watched an interview with Phil Spencer where he said we need to rebalance these because they're both 1.7 gigahertz, PS4 and Xbox One. And then their teraflop GPUs are 1.3 teraflops and 1.7 teraflops, which basically is a floating point operation per second, which is essentially like a fly in the air, a cloud in the sky. Like that's a thing. So that's how many operations they can do in a second. So the more powerful, the more detail you can have in there. So the PS4 Pro went from 1.7 to 4 teraflops, so they more than doubled it. And they can kind of run 4K, near 4K. Xbox One X went from 1.3 teraflops to 6 teraflops. They went up 4 times. So they can have real 4K. So now the CPU is the interesting part. The PS4 Pro went from 1.7, they clocked it up to 2.1. The Xbox One X, they clocked it from 1.7 up to 2.3. And I will tell you, it's so much snappier, guys. It's so much more ridiculously snappy. I had to send my Xbox in for service. So I was using my One S for 3 weeks, and it was so sluggish. Just hitting the menu, just going to settings, just looking at different stuff, just trying to switch between apps. It was so sluggish. That's the benefit of having the 8-core CPU is you can do a lot of different tasks, but if it's not clocked very fast, it's going to limit it. And I watched an interview with Bungie where the head developer at Bungie said they could not actually make Destiny run at 60 FPS because of CPU limitations. And you're talking about CPU limitations, you're talking about like all the alpha effects, all the particle effects, the dust in the air, the bullets flying through the air, all that different type of stuff is all going to put a strain on the CPU. And the more of it there is, the more strain on the CPU. And eventually, you hit a point where you cripple the CPU and you can't do any more. And that's where these consoles are at now. They basically have limited games to what they are because there's over 100 million current generation consoles out there. That's what developers are developing games for, not for PC. So, Phil Spencer said they need to rebalance. He said in an interview, we need to rebalance the console to make it a little more balanced, which means I've said for a couple years now, if they don't have at least a 3 gigahertz CPU, the next generation of consoles, it's not a next gen. That's what it would take to make it a next gen. They could keep the 6 teraflop GPU, maybe do like a 6 teraflop and like then a 9 or 10 teraflop option for people that wanted much higher end. But without a 3 gigahertz CPU, I said even if they took this 6 teraflop GPU in the One X and they gave it a 3 gigahertz CPU, because this game can almost run 60 FPS for games that couldn't before. So like 3 gigahertz with the same GPU would make a world of difference. Then there were rumors that it was going to be the Zen architecture. And I was like, that would be ridiculous. They would absolutely get 3 gigahertz out of it. And then it was rumored they were going to do the Zen Plus architecture, which is another generation. I was like, no way, dude. No way they're getting that in there. Well, guess what? It turns out it's going to be Zen 2, which is the 3rd generation architecture, which is not even out yet for the PC. For the cutting edge, the bleeding edge PC enthusiasts like myself, I can't even buy that yet. So this is what he says. Mark Cerny says, the key question is whether the console adds another layer to the sorts of experiences you already have access to, or if it allows for fundamental changes in what a game can be. And that is the reason why we've experienced this is me talking now. We've experienced no new things in gaming for a long time because the consoles are so gimped. They're so limited. So he keeps referring to it as the next gen console in quotes. Oh wow, there's 90 million PS4s out there right now, man. So that's pretty. So we're talking about CPU and GPU. So he says here, the CPU is based on the 3rd generation of AMD's Ryzen line, contains a new 7 nanometer, which is a big deal, guys. My chip is a 14 nanometer. The Zen Plus is a 12 nanometer. Zen 2 is a 7 nanometer chip. That is groundbreaking stuff, guys. That is groundbreaking. Intel has not been able to even get to 10 nanometers, and they're the leaders in the world. Now, there's a whole lot of other stuff that goes into that, but let's skip over that because that's for another day. But also the GPU is going to be a variant of Radeon's Navi family, which, guys, that hasn't launched yet. So not only the graphics and the CPU are both going to be so advanced, they're not even out right now, which is ridiculous. Ridiculous considering that these things were out in 2010 and they were put in a console in 2013. So now we're going back to the days of PS3 and Xbox 360 where they were going to make this thing so powerful. And here's the problem. You know Xbox is not going to allow Sony to take this crown. With the One X, they said that. Phil Spencer said that directly. We are not going to be the second most powerful console anymore. That's the whole reason they made the One X, was because they couldn't stand losing the crown of the most powerful console to Sony. So we talk about it has ray tracing, which is going to be like really realistic lighting effects. I don't know how I feel about that yet. It's probably going to be a couple years before that becomes really mainstream, but that's another thing, whole other thing. So it also includes the 3D audio. And this is, Cerny says that he thinks it can redefine what sound can do in a video game. So this is him saying, quote, as a gamer, he says, it's been a little bit of a frustration that audio did not change too much between PS3 and PS4. With the next gen, the dream is to show how dramatically different the audio experience can be when we apply significant amounts of hardware horsepower to it. And so, of course, this is probably fueled by VR because that's like a big deal. It's like the immersive thing. But like, guys, I'm telling you right now, if there's some sort of dedicated sound chip on there, we're in for such a treat. It's going to be hard to even imagine what that's going to be like, honestly, for you guys. Like, the difference between playing on your TV speakers and playing with like a headset, that's going to be a difference in just your audio. You're just going to be using a headset and it's going to go from TV speakers, which is current generation, to a headset, next generation. It's going to be epic. So we're talking about some serious stuff here, guys. Some serious stuff. He says that he thinks it's going to be a new game changer with the audio effect. We're talking about this. So now he says, you know, same goes for fast travel, far-flung points within a game. So it's like even opening a door can take over a minute depending on what's on the other side, how much data there needs to be. So he's talking about Spider-Man, right? He does PS4 Pro with Spider-Man. And so he's talking about he loads in, he fast travels to a different spot in New York in this game, and it takes 15 seconds, right? So then he does it with the next gen dev kit, which is sitting right next to him, and it took less than 1 second. So it takes 15 seconds right now to load this scene in this game based on, and this is based on limitations of actual hard drives and hard drive transfer speeds, and it took less than 1 second on the new console. So he's talking about an SSD, guys. If the console had a 3 gigahertz CPU, that would be game changing, and it totally does. Not only that, well, I can't say that for sure, but it has a Zen 2, so it's going to be an unbelievable upgrade, an unreal upgrade, like a true next-gen upgrade, like the next-gen upgrade that I would say some of you have never experienced and some of you have not experienced since you were much younger. We're going to have the biggest jump in games in like 10 to 12 years. It's going to be insane. It's going to be so sick. I can't even believe it. Oh, man. So we're talking about SSD, the speed which a character move through the world, like, you know, again, kind of moving different things because, like, you know, how fast the data comes off the hard drive, so he does another little thing for him. So if this doesn't all put it in perspective for you guys, he's talking about the thing again. He says, like, you know, an SSD is important, which is a solid state drive. And he said, but it's not everything, you know, like the speed is important, but also so are the input output mechanisms and how they work. So he's like, you can take a PS4 Pro and you can put an SSD in it that costs $400, but it's probably going to be like a third faster. Whereas the speed difference from the fast travel demo is 19 times faster. Now, that's just one demo, one game. Of course, they're going to show you the best case scenario. But it's like, guys, I can't even, like, I can't even believe this, okay? So this is all this, like, they talk about all this kind of stuff, and you get the impression, like, dude, this guy knows what's happening right now. Like, this is pretty tense for me in the game. I knew where this one guy was. I see him right there. Yep, I see him right there, but I didn't shoot at him. Oh, I did shoot at him. As if all this wasn't enough, it's like, dude, this is what he's saying. Like, this makes me so excited and so hyped for this next generation console because he's getting it. He's saying, like, look, we get it. You know, like, here's what we need to do. And he's saying all the same things that need to be done that I'm saying need to be done to make these like a real game changer. And as if all that wasn't enough, I'll leave you guys with this. I'm so excited to have made this video. I'm so glad it actually worked out this time. I'm so glad to have gotten this win. I couldn't be more excited knowing exactly just where he's coming from, and again, knowing that Xbox is not going to lose to PlayStation. They're not going to lose, technically on hardware-wise, they're not going to lose to PlayStation. So they are absolutely going to hit it out of the park, both of these guys, and I cannot wait, okay? So like I said, as if all this wasn't enough to be like, dude, this is going to be the biggest generational leap we've had in well over a decade. Let's just say this. Remember what I talked about resolution? Right? Resolution saying that the original consoles launched, the Xbox One and PS4 launched without even being able to produce true 1080p. I'm gonna leave you with this. I'm gonna just end the video right after I say this because it's so epic. Zen 2 architecture, which is ridiculously powerful, ridiculously going to be efficient, going to have unbelievable performance. Navi GPU graphics, which again is going to have unbelievable performance. Just absolutely so exciting to hear about all these things, talking about dedicated chips for audio, just game-changing. So we're talking about 3 things in a row that are game-changing. Game-changing CPU, game-changing audio, and game-changing hard drive. Oh, I can't even explain. Any one of these upgrades just on their own would be significant enough to be called, you know, almost a new generation. So the fact that we're getting 4 things, hard drive, CPU, GPU, audio, the fact that we're getting those 4 things in tandem in the way he's talking about it, like, hey guys, here's this, here's that, talking ridiculously technical. This makes me so excited. I have not been this excited in a really long time. Like I said, since my first 5 Blackout wins, I have not been this pumped to like jump out of my seat and scream and yell. Oh man. So again, as if all that wasn't enough. Now this is I'm just going to leave it with this, because this just shows you their mental state and what they're thinking about this console and how they've completely rethought the console. Like, hey, we need to get better with this, we need to get better with that, we need to get better with that. They've decided to improve every single metric possible on the console. Better CPU, incredible CPU, better hard drive, SSDs. incredible graphics, not even released yet, and dedicated audio chips for some of the most ridiculous. Like, I'll tell you, as someone who plays with a Dolby surround headset with a virtual surround box that does virtual processing, the difference between that and regular stereo audio is unbelievable. It's like having your eyes closed versus having your eyes open. So as if all that wasn't enough, this will say it all for you, just so you understand where they're trying to go and how hard they're going with this console. The the PS5 is going to support 8K. Let me know what you guys think about that. I can't believe it!